Right. So good evening, everyone, and thank you for turning out tonight and showing some interest in this. First thing I have to ask you, are you comfortable if I take my mask off? So, thank you. If I'm going to have to talk for a little bit, that would be much better. Right, now having said that, can I just say to you to please keep your masks on, stay spaced out and be considerate of others. We do have a question and answer period later, but we've got it sorted so that you can keep your masks on if you've got questions to ask. Can I just remind you of what the fire and safety regulations are? There are 2 exits, one at either side there, behind me, or behind you. So that's where you head if there's any fire sirens go off. Earthquakes, drop, cover, maybe the chairs will protect you. I doubt that you'll all get under that table, but that's the best we can do. You probably know better than I do that the public toilets are either side at the back there. All right, the format of the evening, small presentation from me, questions and discussion to follow. Now, before I go any further, let me do some introductions. I'm Joy Patterson. I'm the present chair of the Line Trust. And on my left, going round there, you have Ant Ford from Ford Simpson, who's the secretary of the Line Trust, Craig O'Connor, who provides the legal advice to the Line Trust, Hugh Perry, who's the Timaru trustee, Mike Downs, who's the trustee from Waimate, Karen McCrosty, Timaru trustee, and Peter Binns, also Timaru trustee. And I would like also to particularly welcome Alistair France, who is a previous trustee and a previous director on Alpine Energy, but he now tells me he's retired and enjoying some retirement. I have one apology so far, and that is from Jim Anderson, who I believe is watching from the live stream, and I think this is a good opportunity to welcome those people who may be coming in and watching us on the live stream. Are there any other apologies for the evening? Thank you. All right. Purpose of the meeting tonight. The trustees are recommending a change to the deed of trust to streamline the process for future changes without the expense of a postal vote. A postal vote is very expensive, costs about $65,000 today, and I'm sure if we did it next year it would increase. So the purpose of this meeting is to inform you of why we think this is a good idea and to hear your views. But basically what we're trying to do is to streamline the process for amending the deed, avoid a postal vote so that we can return more to the consumers and save money. But I'm going to provide you with a bit of background to the trust because we've discovered that people don't really know what the Line Trust does or who it is. So the first thing is that we hold, on behalf of the consumers, 40% of Alpine Energy shares. And the value of that shareholding is $66 million. It's a considerable sum. The other shareholders are Timaru, Waimate and Mackenzie councils. Alpine Energy is the regional distribution business for South Canterbury, except for places like the Hakateramea, the Upper Rangitata and some smaller areas. And the shareholding of Alpine Energy reflects the fact that Timaru District Council was the sole ownership of Timaru Electricity, and this was before the reforms back in the 1990s. But there was a need for, or a desire for, broad community ownership, so the shareholding was then spread between Timaru District Council, the 2 other councils, and the setting up of a trust to hold 40%. In 1993, it was thought that the South Canterbury Power Trust and its successor should have a maximum life of 15 years. And that was changed in 2002, and Line Trust South Canterbury was formed, and that had a perpetuity period of 80 years. So the present deed of trust is now 20 years old. Now, what does the Line Trust trustees do? Well, we've got 4 main duties. We appoint 2 or possibly 3 of the directors to Alpine Energy. At present, we appoint 2, but we could go up to 3. We also make sure that we return the dividend to consumers that we get from Alpine Energy. And we ensure, by keeping in touch with the board of Alpine Energy, that the value of the shareholding is maintained, and we make any decisions about the ownership of the shares. Now, the Line Trust returns at least 90% of the dividend after expenses are deducted, and we return that to consumers either in a direct refund or via projects like the Warmer Kiwi Homes. But we operate under a deed of trust. Now, as I said, background, there we go. The trust was written about 20 years ago. It's out of date with some modern business practices. It's out of date with recent trust legislation in parts, not all completely. It doesn't take into account modern technology. There are many minor and technical changes, and there are some more complex possible changes. Now, these are all possible things that could be done. Now, examples are, if you've ever bothered to read the trust deed, there's a list of definitions at the front, one of which include things like Timaru electricity, which no longer exists. It refers to the electors, which no longer is relevant, and lots of other bits and pieces. They are minor technical things. They don't really affect the running of the trust, they're just there. But there are other things. We've been running Zoom meetings over the last 2 years. The trust deed doesn't mention anything about Zoom meetings. It does say we can have meetings by telephone, but I'm not sure whether telephones and Zooms are the same thing. And if somebody wanted to query that, I don't know. The perpetuity period under recent legislation is 125 years. Our deed says 80 years. There's a difference there. The appointment of directors is something that's interesting. We're going through that process right this minute. Every 3 years, the director's appointment finishes, their term ends, and we have to go through a recruitment process for that, which is an expensive thing to do. The present one is $18,000. And we have to do that whether the person that's actually in that position is fulfilling their duties effectively. The board chair and the board themselves are more than happy with their performance. It doesn't matter. We still have to go out to the market and test it. You might say, well, if the person is doing a really good job, why would we do that? And maybe we shouldn't have to do that, but we have to at the moment because that's the way the trust deed is written. I'm not saying you want put somebody to roll over and over forever. You might want to word the new clause to say, no, they have to be there a maximum of 2 terms or something like that. I have to say also that it's been said that the powers to invest in the present trust deed are very narrow, and they could be wider and allow more investment possibilities. Now, all this was brought to a head about 3 years ago when TDHL, which is the commercial arm of Timaru District Council, proposed the sale of shares. That caused quite a flurry. I won't go back over that, it's past history, but what it did highlight to us was that we weren't sure at all about whether we could borrow money if we were going to buy some of the shares. Some people said yes, others said no. It's interesting. It would be nice if the trust deed actually said, yes, you could do this under certain circumstances. So that's why we think that there are opportunities for changing the trust deed, but we come up against this business that if we have to change the trust deed, we have to have a postal vote. Now, this is a complex process. We don't hold the names and addresses of all the consumers. The only people who have that are the retailers. So we have to go to Alpine Energy and ask them to approach the retailers. They will then work out which of their people live in our district. Then they'll build a database, send it to Alpine Energy, who will put the whole database together, and then send it to us. Well, they actually don't send it to us, they send it to the people who are running the postal vote. Now, I had a message today to say that there were actually 25,000 people on that names and addresses list. So if we have to have a postal vote that goes out to all those people, the cost is amazing. And as I said before, $65,000 for this year. And that means that that is 11% of the funds returned to consumers will be spent on this. And this is why, in the past, the trustees have put off changing anything because of the cost and the complexity of it. Oops, I've changed back. So we've come up with a proposal that we're putting to consumers, which requires this postal vote, that future changes to the deed are agreed at a special meeting at an AGM. And we're doing this because we can't see how we could affect any changes by a postal vote. There are so many possible ones that if we tried to amalgamate them all to save money, it would be an impossible thing to sort out. So this is why we're suggesting to consumers that this is a better way to do it. The benefits are it will save money, which will mean that more money will be returned to consumers. It will still allow full scrutiny of the proposal and full discussion. The disadvantages, people will need to attend a meeting. And that's democracy in action, that you turn up, you listen to the arguments, you look at what's proposed, you think about it, and then you attend a meeting and make a decision. So what are the changes that we're proposing? Well, to actually achieve this, we need to change 3 clauses. The first one and the next one are Clause 13, which is about how information goes out to consumers. Now, on the wording there, and you've got one in front of you which is probably easier to read than the one on the screen. The current wording is on the left-hand side and the proposed wording is on the right-hand side. Now, for Clause 13.1, the change is in the last 4 lines, where we are able to put documents and information in other places in the district that we nominate during normal business hours and on any business day, or posted on the website by the trust. Now, 20 years ago, websites were probably a new thing and not thought about when the trust deed was written. But we have a website and it's a great way to communicate to people. So that's one of the changes. Now, these 2 changes, this one and the next one, are about getting information out to consumers about proposed changes. So Clause 13.2, which is the next one, the current wording again on the left, the proposed wording, once again, it's the last 5 lines there. So a principal newspaper circulated in the district, and in addition, the trustees may, in their discretion, employ any electronic means for the purposes of communicating with consumers. So once again, website, possibly email, possibly Zoom, or something that we haven't thought of yet. But that allows us to use that to communicate with people, and that's important if we're going to consult with people about things, and that you know, or consumers know, what's been suggested. Now, the main change is Clause 14.1. Whoops, back again, I'm pushing the button twice. And this one we're changing completely. Once again, you've got the wording in front of you, the current wording is on the left, and which says that the deed cannot be changed unless there's been a postal vote. Now, what we're suggesting is that it can be amended if the amendment has been provided to consumers according to the Clause 13 of the trust deed, which is getting the information out there so people know what we're talking about, and that the proposed amendment has been approved by a majority of consumers attending an annual general meeting of the trust or any special meeting of the trust for the purpose of considering any such amendment to the trust deed, and it's convened in accordance with the terms of the trust deed or any rules contained in any schedule of the trust deed. So that's the main change. The previous 2 bits were about how we communicate possible changes, and then this is the change that's important. Now, one of the things that we were thinking about is, if we do this, how can we make sure that the purpose of the trust deed is not changed in any way? What protects it? And the safeguard is an entrenched clause, Clause 14.2. You've got it there in front of you. The real thing about it says that the key part is that the trustees are not permitted to alter the trust in a way which departs from its existing requirements to obtain a reviewed proposal of the trust's shareholding, and more significantly, to seek the consultation of consumers before making any decision to sell or transfer its shareholding. Now that comes back to that fourth duty I talked about. We appoint directors, we return dividends, we make sure that shareholding's value is maintained, and we also make decisions about the ownership of the shares. And this is the bit that safeguards that. We can't do it, or the trustees can't do it, without actually consulting with people, with consumers. So that's the safeguard. 14.2. Now, the process for how we go about this stage, we need a postal vote to approve this proposal. So the voting papers will be sent out on Wednesday the 27th of April. Voting closes on noon of Thursday the 26th of May, and the results will be announced Wednesday the 1st of June. We're asking you for one vote, yes, to agree to changing clauses 13.1, 13.2 and 14.1. And can I assure you that if it's passed, all other changes will be done at a meeting sometime in the future. I'd like to emphasise this, that while the trustees have actually thrown up a number of things that they thought might make a better trust deed, no decisions have been made. We haven't even looked at any proposed wording of these things, and we will be doing it slowly over some years. Some changes are simple. People will say, yeah, no-brainer. But others will need to be considered very carefully and to understand what the full ramifications of it. So there's no hurry to do this. All we're proposing to do is to streamline the process for doing it. So in a nutshell, that's what we're proposing to do. Now, let's see if you've got some questions, some points that you want to make. If you can leave your masks on, if you think we will need to, because there are people listening by live stream, we will need to use a microphone which we will hold on a boom in front of you if you've got any questions that you want to ask or any points you want to make. Any questions? Yes? Thank you. Otherwise, people on the live stream can't hear.
Yes, Jania Lobb, former trustee and former director of Alpine Energy. I have a concern. When the information you were giving us, you said that there are other issues that might be a little bit more complex that have to be raised. Are you able to allude to any of those issues that you have in the wings coming up? These seem very simple.
Yep.
But what else is it that you want to consider that you need to drop 14.1? Because I am very, very concerned about that.
Okay. Thank you. All right. The two that I'm thinking of is the power to invest. It's very narrow at the moment. Any monies that we have, we put into term deposit, which at the present time earns very little. It would be good to be able to invest in other equities. I'm not saying that we would want to fling our money into all sorts of risky things. It would have to be done under very good advice and being very careful with that. But that's one area that we should look at. The other thing that concerns me is, it's not as pertinent now probably, but the powers to borrow. I would like to know just where we sit with that. Those are the only two that I can think of that are more complex. Oh, there are bits like the AGM is not spelled. Well, once again, it's quite simple. The AGM duties are not spelt out very well. In fact, they're sort of mixed in with other things. But that's basically it. I mean, I'm not saying there might not be more in the future, but those are the ones that we've identified at this point. Any other questions? Oh, sorry.
Would you consider splitting the questions? You say that it's all going to be a yes to all of them or no to all of them, but splitting clauses 13.1 and 13.2 as one set of questions because they relate to reasonably insignificant or operational changes that need to be done, and clause 14.1. I see clause 14.1 as the fundamental of the Lion Trust business, of the Lion Trust essence of a trust deed. And I noticed your comments, a lot of your comments were about the democratic model and so on, and what is happening. And I know what's happening in democracy widespread at the moment is that 30,000 people are too difficult to consult with, so you appoint a few, or you have a meeting, or you have a smaller number, because it's a darn sight easier to make decisions in a group of 30 or less than it is 30,000. However, as a trust and the trustees have a very different requirement on them. They're very onerous and not so well paid as directors and MPs and councillors. But they have the responsibility to all of the beneficiaries. And 30,000 beneficiaries is quite a number, I admit, to wrangle. However, it's been done quite well for the last 25 odd years under the previous trust deed as well. Now, I was fortunate to be on the trust when the original trust deed was there. In fact, I was appointed because the original trust deed was going to have a shortened life. And one of the reasons that I was asked to stand and elected was to make sure that the life of the trust was extended to the length of the life of the other trusts around the country of a similar nature. And when we decided to do that, we got feedback from our beneficiaries that things were correct, that they were happy for us to extend the life of the trust. However, we had some flack from that, as we remember in those days, to say that we don't know whether we had followed the trust deed exactly correctly. So we did, and we had we took a formal referendum, and it took some time and energy to go through and get the result, which was again a resounding extension to the now 80 years of the trust overall, this new trust, by the trustees, by the beneficiaries, sorry. And it was over the 75% of those that were answered that did that. Just to be extra carefully certain that we were following the deed the way it was meant to be followed, because we had an opinion, a legal opinion locally that, oh no, you couldn't do that. We took another legal opinion and they said, that had said yes we could, and why we had set that all in motion, and we followed the consultation process to the T twice. We then went to the High Court in Christchurch and asked that they confirm that our decision was a sound one. At that point, the Timaru District Council, who could see, for whatever reason, that the opportunity of getting hold of their share of the shares within the 16-year time frame it was decided to fold, they took a challenge to the High Court, our High Court motion, and they challenged us and said, no, we shouldn't be able to do that. They lost. We won. We had followed procedure to a T, and we extended the life. Now, one of the key things in this was this section 41 that said we must consult with all of the beneficiaries, and the beneficiaries then had 75% of those voting, and we did that, and they were the ones that allowed us to go ahead and extend it. There are lots of things wrong, time changes and things you need to update your trust deeds, but to update that or change that clause, that's a time immemorial one, as I see it. That clause is fundamental to the basis of the trust, that the trustees act on behalf of all of the consumers attached to the trust, that they consult with all of the beneficiaries who are the consumers that this trust relates to. And forgive me, you'll have to update me if you're having large AGMs, but For many years, Alistair and I know, the AGMs were held on a Friday afternoon at 4 o'clock with the accounting office of the day let off for the nice afternoon tea that we put on to make sure we had a quorum of 20. Now, if you're lucky do you get any more than 20 these days at the AGM?
Only when there is an issue, and perhaps I could break in at that point and say, I'd like to remind people of what happened when the Timaru District Council decided to sell the shares. That was widely advertised, and people decided they didn't want that to happen, and they turned out. And they turned out in great numbers. And they turned out to the AGM to let us know what they thought about that. I have faith in the people who are consumers that when there is an issue which they object to or don't like, they will turn out and they will vote and give us the message. I have no problems with that at all. You talk about the fact that we need to update and streamline our trust deed. Well, we can't do that without spending a huge sum of money, which cuts into the dividends that we return to consumers. So we have safeguards in the trust deed. We have to consult, no matter what, when it comes to the actual ownership of shares. And we have to consult on any change to the deed. So I've got faith in the consumers of this South Canterbury area that if there is an issue or that they are uncertain or that they don't like something that's being proposed, they will let us know. And if it's like Timaru District Council, they'll let us know very loudly and very clearly. So I hope that answers your question. I take on board your concerns, and we are too. I'm also comforted by the fact that we can't touch clause 14.2. It's an entrenched clause which actually safeguards the shareholding or the ownership of the shares. So, sorry? Hold on, I have to work out how to. Yep. That's clause 14.2.
You could have a group of trustees in the future that could decide that they want to shorten the length of the trust. That clause is silent on that, and it talks about 14.1. Well, 14.1 will be gone or changed down to a consultation with whoever turns up at the AGM, if they know about it. I mean, to me, this is a fairly significant change to the trust deed, and we have inundated with the hundreds of people here today. I'm sorry, but I don't think we can rely on that. And I see this as a fundamental. One of the things that the judgment in the High Court that we had to go to judgment for was to say if the changes make a significant difference to the trust deed. And I believe this clause is one of the sacrosanct ones.
Thank you. Are there anything else that people would like to?
I've got a question online here. Why were the proposed changes not advertised so people would understand what this meeting is about? Also, hang on, the announcement in the Courier was in very small print, preventing many from even being able to read it. And that's from Jerry Littenberg. I'm
sorry, Richard, would you mind repeating that? I mean, I'll answer the first part and then I'll get you to repeat the second part because I didn't miss. It was advertised twice in the New Zealand Herald with a very full explanation of what this meeting was about, and it was also advertised twice in the Courier, plus in the newsletters, whatever, in Twizel and in Waimate, and it also referred to more information being on the website. So I believe we actually advertised very widely what the purpose of the meeting was. So Richard, what was the second part of the question, if you wouldn't mind?
The second part was about the very small print. The first part was, Oh, no, well, it's sort of all the same, actually, yeah. Why were the proposed changes not advertised, which you've covered, and also the announcement in the Courier was in very small print, preventing many, so you've covered it, I think.
Thank you. Now, I'm sorry, you had a point or a question, did you, sir? No, okay. Is there anything else then? Well, can I refer you to the fact that if you want more information, it's available on the website, which is up there. If you can't remember that website thing, if you do a Google search online Trust South Canterbury or any search online Trust South Canterbury, it will give you the website. And also you'll find that the proposal and the trust deed and things are at the local library, so you can go in there and pick them up. And if there's nothing else, are there other things? Can I just say thank you for attending, thank you for taking an interest, and appreciate you turning up. I'm sorry not more people have shown an interest, but obviously I don't think it's controversial enough. But we'll see how we go. Can I remind you that if you want to make a submission, you please do so. A written submission can be made, and if you want to come and speak to us about that submission, let us know in your submission and we'll make arrangements for that. As you leave, can I ask you to leave your masks on and don't take them off until you get outside. I know that you might want to stop and chat to people, but if you could do that with your masks on or wait till you're outside. So thank you again for attending. Thank you for the people who've come in by live stream. I appreciate you taking the time as well. And thank you and good evening. Good night.